Big Manny Studios presents an almost original production. Big Manny 7, Dead Manny. Big Manny by Jessica Christ. Written and illustrated by Jessica Christ. Narrated by Jessica Christ. With special guests Ethan Shaw, Cienna Chelsie, and Alfie Thomas. It's early in the morning on the 6th of February 2114. Emmanuel Manny Heffely III is very tall, but not big. He was also dead. The last thing he remembers is someone screaming his name and then nothing. And now he is sitting on some sand on a small island. He stood up and looked around. The only things he saw was a small boat tied to a dock and a red house with smoke coming out of the chimney. Manny was in a very small town scattered across very small islands in the northwest corner of Australia, called Purgatory. Manny walks up to the house's door. As he stumbles over there, he tries to scratch his head, only to feel something wet and warm. He looks at his fingers, and they are covered in blood. He had a large chunk of his head missing, but it didn't hurt. Manny was too tired to worry about this and knocks on the door in front of him. Immediately, a voice speaks to him from inside.
Manny? Whoa, you're at death's door. Why didn't you come through?
The door opened slowly, and Manny stared into the pitch-black doorway and nervously whispers, okay. Manny walks inside to see a very normal-looking house, aside from the cloaked skeleton demon standing down the hall. The demon's name was Death S. Satan, and he had a question for Manny.
What's going on, Mark? Do you want a sandwich?
Manny thinks for a second and replies, yeah, sure. They walk through the house, past a small cat, into the kitchen where Death was already preparing a sandwich, and Manny was sent into the dining room. A few minutes later, Death came back holding a plate with the Macdeath on it. The Macdeath was a sandwich passed down from grandparent to father to son. It is given to Manny, and he digs in as if he hasn't eaten for years. Through a mouthful, Manny says, "Wow, this is incredible. Thank you." Death replies happily,
Yeah, no problem, Mark. It's the least I can do considering you're going to hell or something.
Mid-bite, Manny looks up to Death and says, What? Hell is real? Death gets closer to Manny and speaks in a serious tone.
Manny, I think this is going to be quite hard for you to hear, but you did die about 20 minutes ago in prison. And I know it's going to be hard for you to believe, but heaven and hell is real, and depending on how you lived your life, can depend on where you're going to.
Manny looks concerned, but after thinking for a minute, he continues to be nonchalant and says, Damn, I mean, it's about time, I guess. I never thought I'd make it to 92. Death replies,
I'm glad you've taken this well, Manny. Now eat the rest of your sandwich because it's time for your sins to be judged.
The two men leave the house and climb into the small boat outside. Death rows the boat gently down the stream, passing a few other houses. Manny asks, Where are we going? Death keeps rowing and answers,
We are going to go meet the heaven and hellish judge. They're going to look at your entire life and they will debate on whether you get to go live in peaceful bliss in heaven or if you have to go and suffer in new hell. But it's no pressure, Mark, don't worry.
Manny, still calm despite this news, replies, Right, sounds pretty simple. I feel like I already know which way I'm going. Eventually, the boat embeds itself in the sandbank of mainland Australia. Manny gets out of the boat and looks at the scene in front of him. A sandy beach with a line of people going towards a desk with two people behind it. To the side of them was a solid gold escalator, heading high up into one giant cloud. Further back from them was a chain-link fence, indicating the border between Purgatory and the rest of Australia. Manny turns back behind him and Death says,
Just go wait in our lawn and you'll be fine, March.
Manny nods and stands at the back of the queue. The people in front of Manny were all the people who had died just before him. A few places ahead was an FBI soldier, but he didn't say anything. No one was speaking to each other, likely due to the shock of discovering your own death. The people behind Manny was everyone who had died right after him, and there was only one person to die straight after Manny. His name was Alfie Thomas. After a few hours of waiting in the line, Alfie Thomas had recovered from the shock of being shot through the head, and he notices Manny Heffely standing in front of him, and he asks calmly,
Big Manny? Is that you?
Manny turns around. Alfie Thomas focuses his eyes and shouts,
Big Manny, I hate you. You're the reason I was murdered.
Manny looks confused and replies, Oh, I was told you killed me, so I guess we're even? Alfie Thomas explodes.
I hate how nice you are. Why couldn't I meet Big Manny when he was big? What happened to the warrior king from my childhood? At least I won't have to deal with you anymore when I'm in heaven and you're in hell.
Manny frowns and says, I'm sorry I'm not as evil as I used to be. That was a long time ago. But I still did all that stuff, so yeah, I probably will go to hell. After their argument, Manny makes it to the front of the line, and he stands in front of the two judges, Ron the demon and John the angel. Ron shouts, Next. John reads off the book between them and yells, Emmanuel Manny Heffely III, 92, gunshot. Ron and John begin their debate. He killed lots of people. He was so young. He killed even more people. He said he was sorry. He did drugs. Oh damn, it was space heroin. The judges have decided where Manny will spend eternity. Everyone knows that doing drugs sends you straight to hell, unless you have a prescription. I don't like it, but those are the rules. Ron and John shout, Hell! Manny looks sad, but doesn't say anything, and Alfie Thomas just points and laughs. Ron shouts, Next. John reads off the book between them. Alfie Thomas, 68, gunshot. Then Alfie's jaw drops as the floor beneath Manny opens up and he falls into the gaping maw of hell, screaming all the way down. Oh. Manny wakes up, sat at a yellow bus stop, and stands up. He looks around to see where he is. It seems he's in a huge cave of red stone, but he can't see the walls of the cave or anything in the distance because of a red fog all around. What he can see is a road that starts directly in front of him and then goes off into the distance. Eventually, a speaker attached to a post begins to speak. The bus will arrive in 2 hours, it says calmly, and Manny has no other option than to wait. Nearly 3 hours later, Manny can barely see a bus in the distance, distorted by heavy heat lines and thick red fog. As it arrives at the bus stop, the driver rolls down the window and gobbles, Get in. Manny jumps up from the seat and yells, Finally, this has been torture. Manny climbs into the cramped hell bus, past the dripping, goopy parasite demon driving the bus. Then he sits in the only free chair. All the others are filled by capra demons and winged demons, and even a newborn baby demon that screams and cries constantly. The hell bus passes under a sign that says, Highway to Hell, 1,500 miles to hell on Route 666. Manny gets ready for the long, long drive, listening to the driver snort and sniff, a winged demon coughing, her baby crying, capra demon snorting and talking in its sleep, saying, Oh, I love dogs so much. Over and over. This really was torture. Sometime the next day, the bus finally stops. Manny is jolted from his nap by the goopy driver slorping. Get out! Manny and the legion of demons followed him out. They had now entered Cruciatus Mundi, the city of hell, dedicated to the torture of the dead. Archdemons V. Beelzebub and Stray Damon were waiting for everyone, and once they were all off the bus, V. Beelzebub lectured to the group.
Hello everyone, I'm Mrs. Beelzebub, but you can call me V. Anyone here for my employee induction can go with my colleague, Mrs. Damon. Anyone here for torture is with me.
Stray Damon and the new demon employees walk away, leaving just Manny and Beelzebub alone. V checks her clipboard and says,
Emmanuel Heffely, you are very late.
Manny looks a little annoyed and replies, yeah, the bus didn't pick me up on time. Beelzebub's corporate smile doesn't wane, and they continue.
No, you were supposed to have died on the 11th of September, 2075, as well as the 18th of October, 2078. Somehow you evaded us, but we always get you eventually.
Manny remembers those two dates very well. The day he destroyed the TT-2, and the day the Battle of Hemel Hempstead ended. He jokes to hide the sudden wave of melancholy. Yeah, I'll try to be early next time. V. Beelzebub ignores him and takes a small piece of card off of her clipboard, handing it to Manny and explains.
Right, you're in torture group 29,031,943. Here's your timetable. Make sure you follow it for eternity or you'll have me to deal with.
Manny takes the timetable and thanks V as he reads what it says. Manny Heffely torture timetable is written at the top, and underneath was the timetable itself. Wake up, 6:30. Regular torture, 6:40 to 9:30. Carrying everyone you've killed, 9:35 to 12:30. Lunch, 12:30 to 1. Manual labour, 1:05 to 5. Rehab meeting, 5:05 to 11. Bedtime, 11:30. Then below all that, there was a small heart sticker with V. Beelzebub's signature printed on.
Okay, so your torture group is currently carrying everyone they've killed up Mount Punishment. But because I'm feeling nice, you don't have to do that on your first day.
Beelzebub continued. Then Manny replies, Thanks, that sounds horrible. Where should I go now? Beelzebub checks her watch and answers,
It's almost lunch, so head to the cafeteria for some delicious food.
Manny dawdles over to the building Beelzebub sent him to, the one with the sign that says cafeteria. The door is locked, so he waits around for a few minutes until he hears a loud bell ring as hundreds of thousands of demons, humans, Plutonians, Fiaramen, giants, and even the odd robot charge towards him. They all pushed Manny out of the way to get inside the cafeteria and get as much food as possible. By the time Manny gets in there, the only things left are green beans and a rock. Manny, having barely eaten in the last few days, takes the rock and chews on it for a bit. After the half an hour for lunch is over, the loud bell rings, and every single person shuffles outside to wherever their timetable says to go. Manny looks at his timetable and sees he's meant to be at the manual labour camp in 5 minutes, so he runs over there as fast as possible. When he arrives, V. Beelzebub is already waiting for everyone, and Manny is handed a stone pickaxe, and Beelzebub guided him through the steps of mining rocks. She says,
You're doing great, Manny. Just hit it, then hit it again. Good job.
Manny wipes his forehead and replies, Thanks, Miss Beelzebub. Geez, it's so hot down here. Then he unzips the front of his prison jumpsuit slightly and reveals a jungle of dark grey chest hair. The two men behind Manny are talking amongst themselves. The short man, with a short ginger mohawk, called Ashton Isaac, points at Manny, and talks much louder than he realizes.
Hey, it's that guy you're always talking about.
The tall man with brown hair and stubble, called Matei, replies, "That's him. General Manny, all grown up." The two men abandon their mining to confront Manny, and Matei shouts, "Hello, King Manny. You don't look so good." Manny turns around, confused. Manny recognized him instantly. It's Giga Matei from the Battle of Hemel Hempstead. The last time they had seen each other, Matei had killed a few million small Mannies, and in retaliation, the small Mannies had killed him. Matei shouts, "You ruined everything. All I wanted was revenge for my dead family. Who, if you forgot, you killed." Manny looks guilty and replies, "Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm not proud of who I used to be. Are you okay though? That cough seems pretty bad." Matei screams, "Of course I'm not. I was suffocated to death by a group of 1-foot-tall small Mannies, and that means here in hell I have holes in my lungs. That's why my voice sounds different, by the way." Just then, Beelzebub interjects.
Excuse me, boys. Can we get back to work, please?
Matei, through gritted teeth, says, "Yes, sorry, V." At the same time, Manny sheepishly replies, Sorry, Miss Beelzebub. Hey, what's that noise?" A few meters away, a loud bwoosh can be heard as a red swirl appears roughly a meter above the ground. It rapidly expands to a huge blood-red portal with a pentagram embedded in the rotating corkscrew. A small man called Davisir Tirostir could be seen walking through the portal, wearing a suit and a headband with fake horns attached to it. When he was out of the portal, he looks around nervously and blushes, then says, "All rise and prepare thyselves for the immense power of our dark lord, the god of eternal damnation, Kris." Beelzebub suddenly bows their head in respect. Just then, someone was stomping down the portal hallway. They came out and had to duck their head just to get through. This was Kris Satan, an upper god. The upper gods were a group of extremely old, extremely powerful people who rule over everything. It was rare to ever see an upper god these days. They don't like going down to earth much because it constantly ends poorly for everyone. However, this was a special occasion. Kris must be 12 feet tall, including the long curling horns growing out of the top of their head. They wore a pair of black boots, black short shorts, and a black tank top with a red pentagram burned into the center that was actually a tattoo on their red-skinned chest. Kris was very muscular and took good care of themselves. They wiped their brown, messy hair away from their face to reveal dark red pupils to indicate how evil they are. Then they spoke. "Hey everyone, it's me, Kris. You probably know me as the devil from the Bible. Anyway, I heard we have a bit of a celebrity in this group. Manny Heffely. You've sent a lot of people here, and I just want to thank you. We all hope that you have a terrible time." Manny frowns and replies, "Yeah, thanks." Kris expected some kind of argument or fight from Manny, but he just wouldn't. So Kris and their assistant Davisir went back through the portal up to their castle, while Manny goes back to mining hell rocks, as he would do every day for potentially forever. The next morning, Manny's first full day of torture begins. He wakes up at 6:30 and is sent to the torch factory at 6:40. Then for the next 3 hours, Manny's bones were snapped and back whipped as he screams in pain. Then, at 9:30, Manny's torture group is sent to Mount Punishment, an enormous stalagmite that has formed high up to the ceiling of the cave. Mount Punishment is used for torture of murderers, where they must carry the weight of every person they've killed on their back. And Manny had killed a lot of people. He struggled to make it even a few feet up the mountain, but he had to keep trying for the 3 hours of allotted time he had. Then he went to lunch, mined rocks, and had his 6-hour rehab meetings before going back to sleep to continue his torture. He stayed there for years and years. Decades passed, with few interesting moments between the monotony of hell. Manny and Matei constantly fought, both verbally and physically. One day in 2136, Matei screamed, "I hate you," as his arm turned into Giga Matei's large grey-scale muscular arm and punches Manny in the face, leaving him permanently blind in his right eye. By 2181, Manny felt bored of his torture, doing anything, even something unpleasant, for as long as this, it becomes mind-numbingly boring. The demons in the torture factory stab and cut Manny as much as always, but he doesn't even scream anymore. He's now strong enough to carry the inconceivably large pile of people he'd killed a good mile-ish up Mount Punishment. Every single innocent person, Plutonian Guard, Super Joe, and so many more. In 2239, Manny and Matei finally got to speak to each other without ending in a fight. Matei said, "Manny, today would have been my son's birthday. As a gift to him, I want to forgive you, as I'm sure he would have done the same." Manny tears up slightly. In his torn, dirty, scuffed prison jumpsuit, through his chipped tooth and scruffy dark grey beard, he replies, "Thank you, Matei. I hope we can be friends for the rest of the time that we spend here." It was now the year 2274. It had been 160 years since Manny had died, and he barely remembered life before hell. Torture Group 29,031,943 sat in a circle in the rehab meeting room inside Hell's community centre. Ashton Isaac was mid-sentence, shouting,
And that's why I love space meth.
V. Beelzebub wrote down some notes on their clipboard. Her wrinkled face curled into a smile and said,
Thank you, Ashton. Too much information as always. Matei, would you like to share?
Matei, even after all this time, found the 6-hour rehab meetings infuriating. He answered V the same way he always did. Yes, I smoked space weed in college that one time, so now I deserve to be tortured forever. I am a terrible person. Blah, blah, blah. V wrote some notes down and said,
Yes, very good. Manny, anything to say?
Manny, knowing that it doesn't matter what he says because he'd just have to come back here tomorrow, decides that he'll say what he really thinks for once. This is so stupid. I haven't done drugs in almost 2 centuries, but I still have to go to these damn meetings every day. V. Beelzebub shakes her head, but doesn't let their smile go, and says,
Tisk tisk. Manny, what have I told you about this? You need to accept that you have a problem.
As she says this, they press a small button on her chair, labelled, "The button that makes slime appear." Just then, the ceiling opens up and pours green slime all over Manny. He tries to wipe the slime off of himself, but it doesn't help, so he reluctantly asks, "Can I go clean up, please?" Beelzebub politely answers,
Yes, of course. Be quick.
Manny left the rehab meeting room and goopsed down the hallway to the bathrooms. Manny takes a shower and washes his clothes of all the slime. Half an hour of rigorous cleaning later, Manny leaves the bathroom. But on his way back to the rehab meeting room, he sees a green fire exit and says to himself, "I've never noticed this. I wonder what's out there." He decides to take a look, even though he wasn't fire. He pushes open the latch and peeks outside to see a small wooden shed with the words Anubis, god of torturous composition. This seems to be where the upper god Anubis lives. Manny thought there was no harm in looking inside, and he very quietly opens the flimsy wooden door and creeps his head in. Inside the very small cabin was a lanky, skinny, sand-coloured skinned man, except his head was the one of a dog. Of course, this isn't unusual at all, since there are many Fiaramen throughout history with animal heads. However, this was no Fiaraman. This was an upper god. The weakest and youngest of all upper gods, Anubis. He was in charge of designing and building all torture scenarios, including Manny's dire 6-hour rehab meetings. As Manny peered inside, he said, without thinking, hello? Oh, no. Anubis was writing some new ideas on his backboard when he hears Manny and says, What? What'd you say? And he turns around, but as his leg turns to face Manny, it lands on a stray pencil. Anubis slips on it and tumbles forwards. Manny felt like he saw it in slow motion. Anubis fell forwards and smacked his head on the corner of the desk, splattering blood everywhere. Anubis was dead. Manny took a step back. He didn't know much about the upper gods, having been raised an atheist, but from what he knew, they were immortal, unkillable. If this wasn't true, what else had they lied about? But now was not the time to dwell on this. Manny screams and runs out of there, back inside the rehab meeting room, trying to forget what he had just witnessed. Manny walked back inside, just in time to interrupt another of Pablo Escobar's near-endless stories. And then I found this grizzly bear digging through my stash of space cocaine. He yammers on. Manny makes it over to his seat, completely emotionless. He didn't have his usual neutral face. This was completely empty. V sees him and says,
Manny, please, take a seat.
He takes a seat, and Pablo continues his story quietly. Matei notices Manny's odd lack of expression and whispers, Hey, are you all right, buddy? Manny stares 1,000 miles away and quietly replies, No, not at all. I think I killed Anubis. Matei's jaw hits the floor as he says, Oh my, what? How? How did you do that? Manny begins to break down. It was an accident. I just walked into his shed, and I guess I scared him because he slipped, and now he's dead. Someone's going to notice, and who knows what they're going to do to me. Matei thinks for a bit and says, I thought the upper gods were immortal, but if you're saying they aren't, then we should kill the rest. Since I got sent here almost 200 years ago, I realized how inhumane the afterlife is. Forcing people to live a whole other life away from everyone they knew is just unfair. So let's do this. That was the plan. A very messy one, but it was something. Kill all the gods. From what anyone knew, there are 9 left. 2 more rule over hell, Hades and Kris. But the other 7 live in heaven, so they'd need to find a way into Heaven City. They spend the next day planning what to do. They decide that Hades would be an easier target, since he stays late in his office every night. They steal a few daggers from the torture factory, and by the evening, they snuck out of the dorms and made it over to accounting. Matei says, V is going to kill us if she finds out about this. Manny whispers, Every demon in hell is going to kill us if we get caught. Now be quiet. We're supposed to be asleep. They walk inside and don't look directly at anyone. As they walk past imp demons, goblin demons, and skeleton demons, all working at computers and counting the various ways people have died today, They make it up to the large double doors that lead into Hades' office. Manny confesses, "I'm so nervous about this. Murder used to make me feel so powerful, but now I just feel empty." Matei replies, "I get how you feel, but this is for a good reason, alright? Just block it out of your mind and get ready for this." Hades is the god of the dead, but not of death. Hades is in charge of knowing who is where after they die, as well as the money side of new buildings and torture scenarios. Manny bursts through the doors into the office as Matei crawls on the floor. They see him, Hades Tautarus, a large, beefy man who's wider than he is tall. His ash-coloured skin is covered in many tattoos. On his right arm was the Hades symbol, and on his left arm was a large heart with the word Persephone crossed out. And above the heart was a larger word, Nyx. He wore a traditional purple toga and nothing else. His head was small and square, mostly covered by his thick greying beard, as well as his bald head that was constantly on fire. His desk had a death counter on it that shows the exact number of people who have died since the creation of this afterlife system. It's moving too fast to get an accurate number, but it's just barely over 100 billion. And in small letters underneath it says, "Death counter since 3869 BB. Hades stares at Manny for a second and asks,
Hey, what do you want, boy?
Manny puts the dagger behind his back and looks up at the ceiling, all innocent-like, and replies, "Oh, nothing. I'm just looking for..." "Stab him! Stab him! Stab him!" And Matei pops up behind Hades' head holding a dagger and stabs it deep into Hades' back. This startles him, causing his flame hair to go out. Manny jams his dagger into Hades' chest over and over. Then Matei jumps up onto his shoulders and, holding the dagger with both hands, drives it deep into the top of his head, as everyone screams. Hades is brought to his knees, coughing up blood, as Matei stabs 6 or 7 more daggers into his back. Manny walks up to him slowly and raises his dagger up into the air and slashes it down through Hades' stomach, and all his organs flow out into a pile. Hades was dead. Just then, Beelzebub walked into the office to see the scene in front of her, and she screams.
You two should be in bed. I told you to follow the timetable exactly as it is written. But you thought you were too good for that, huh? Thought you could just stay up past your bedtime to kill my boss, huh? I will be reporting this, boys. Very disappointed.
Matei and Manny try to hide their weapons, but it's already too late, and they both say, "Uh-oh." V pulls out a walkie-talkie and murmurs into it. A few seconds later, and the speaker in the corner of the room crackles to life. "Attention, Hades has been murdered. I repeat, the man who signs your paycheck has been murdered." Minutes later, Matei and Manny were being chased by every single demon in hell as they all scream in unison, "Kill, kill, kill. Kill, kill, kill." They're chased out of accounting, past the torture factory. Stray Damon, even in her old age, throws huge wooden spears at them. Eventually, they run past a small cave and hear a voice shout from inside,
"Quick, in here!"
With no time to think about it, Matei and Manny swoop into the cave, unnoticed by the swarm of demons. Then they run around for a bit, until a Taurus demon shouts ignorantly, "They went that way," and the demons are lost. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Matei and Manny are struggling to breathe. They look across from them to see someone cloaked in shadow. Manny regains his breath and says, "Thank you, you saved us." Matei asks the mystery man, "Who are you, mystery man?" Just then, the mystery man takes a single step forward to put his face into the light. He was tall and muscular and wearing a slightly ripped prison uniform with the sleeves cut off to show his enormous arms. He also had a very large bleeding hole in the center of his forehead, from where he was shot dead. Manny shouts in surprise. No way, it's Alfie Thomas. It was Alfie Thomas. Matei looks confused and doesn't know who this is. Once they had fully recovered, Manny questioned their saviour. Alfie Thomas, sir, I thought you were in heaven. What are you doing here? Alfie looks embarrassed and answers,
I didn't exactly get into heaven like I thought. Apparently physically and emotionally abusing my prisoners isn't that legal.
Manny thought that made sense, but didn't want to make Alfie feel worse. So he replies, I'm so sorry, but why did you help us? I thought you hated me. Alfie confesses.
I do still hate you, but a rumour's gone round that you want to assassinate the 10 upper gods. I think these gods are imposters, so I want to help. You can't do this alone.
Matei butts in and says, I'm very happy our message has spread. We think that when you die, you should just stop existing, or at least have a choice on what happens. Some of us have regrets we don't want to deal with for centuries longer than needed. So thanks for the help. The group make sure it's safe and step outside. The cave was on the edge of a cliff that went down into a pool of molten lava. But high up in the sky was a floating palace, suspended on one of the many levitating islands. They can only do this because of the unusual gravity this close to the Earth's core. Alfie Thomas points up at the manor above them and says,
There's Kris's castle. It'll be a long climb to get up there.
Alfie is referring to the rough line of floating islands leading all the way up to Kris's castle. The trio slowly make their way up to the final Lord of Hell, and by the next morning, they are at the front door to the giant redstone mansion with purple stained glass windows. This high up in the Hell Cavern was called Necrovol of the Demon Kings. Obviously, Kris lives here, but you can see far in the distance Hades' house, as well as a few smaller buildings where the richest of people get tortured. They walk up to the double doors and Manny knocks twice. A minute later, Kris's manservant, Davisir Tirostir, cracks open the door and asks, What dost thine require? Manny rolls his eyes and answers, We need to see Lord Kris, for no reason in particular. Davisir looks back inside and replies, Mistress Kris is preoccupied. Thou shalt come by on another moon. Good day. With no other option at all, Manny and Matei and Alfie burst through the doors, throwing Davisir down the hallway. Then, to be safe, they kick him against the wall, bruising him and breaking his bones until he bleeds out. It had to be done. They run through the building, up the stairs into Kris's office. They see them, sat at their desk. The desk is covered in various documents, drawings, and torture devices, and behind them is a large purple-stained window, beaming light into the room. Kris was very unprepared and doesn't know what to say. Matei tenses his entire body as hard as he can, as purple waves appear around him, until he transforms into his ultimate form, Giga Matei. Perfectly practical in every way, mentally unstoppable, physically impenetrable. His mid-length brown hair and messy short beard become a short, sleek, dark grey to show off his sharp jawline. His whole body is a grey-scale tint to represent something beyond what we already know. He yells, False god Kris, you are going to die. Kris sits up in their chair and rips their shirt off to show the burning pentagram over Kris's scarred muscular body. They scream, Try your best, mortals, but I rule over hell and everything in it. Kris jumps over to the trio and they begin to fight. Punches and kicks are thrown out. Manny gets onto the upper god's shoulders, scratching their face. Pow, wham, smash. They try everything they can, but Kris Satan won't relent, and they shout, Your efforts are useless. I am the strongest of the gods. Right as they say this, Manny gets a good grip on one of Kris's foot-long horns and uses all the strength he can muster to snap it off Lord Kris's head. They scream in pain, and Matei swings a roundhouse kick into the Demon King's head. This pushes Kris off their balance, and their huge fist smacks Alfie in the arm so hard his right hand is ripped off and flies up in the air, and he covers his mouth to muffle the screaming. Then Manny holds up Kris's broken horn up in the air and swings it round into the side of Lord Kris's head. The point of the horn pierces their brain. Kris's eyes blur, and their face becomes a blank expression as they stumble back and forth, causing Manny to jump off. Kris murmurs their last thought. Tell Jessica. Tell her I'm sorry about the snake thing. And then they fell backwards onto the floor. Kris was dead. Manny stands on top of their victim and says, "We did it. We killed the 3 gods of hell." Matei frowns and replies, "We did. Still doesn't feel good. The circle of violence never ends. But maybe now hell is free, the circle can get a little thinner." Alfie Thomas covers his bleeding, severed arm and says,
Hey, don't be so sad. We did something no one's ever done. Satan's dead, and we're the guys who did it. But how are we supposed to get into heaven and kill the other fake gods?
At the back of the office, there is a gold door frame with a plaque above it that says, Heaven. The door has a huge lock over the front, and Alfie Thomas sees a small gold key on Kris's desk that he picks up. Then he puts the key near the lock, and the door ascends into the ceiling. Manny's scruffy face lights up and yells, "It's a back door to heaven. If we go through, we can deal with the 7 upper gods together." Matei had now transformed back into his regular body, but had a flowing nosebleed. He frowns and says, "Manny, we aren't going with you. On the climb up here, me and Alfie Thomas decided to stay. I mean, someone has to make sure hell doesn't fall apart." Alfie Thomas looks sad, but says,
Yeah, we'll keep the demons in check until you finish the mission. I hate to admit it, but you're clearly the strongest, so good luck. And if you see Taylor Johnson up there, tell him I said hi.
Manny is surprised by this and replies, "What? I'm gonna miss you guys. But if you think that you should stay here, then that's for the best. Thank you so much for helping me, both of you." Then he walks into the portal door to heaven and disappears in a purple mist. To be continued. And that's Big Manny 7. I wrote this the same week as Big Manny 6, but now that that video is out, I've seen how many of you like the longer videos, and I'm so happy with this channel's slow success. This book is a pretty big leap in the plot, having introduced the concept of gods and throwing the story into the 2200s, but it will make sense eventually. Hope you're all excited to see what happens in heaven. Also, watch my other videos, please. I've got a new one coming up in like a couple days from whenever this has come out, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Please watch it. Bye.